August 14, 1987, 11 fishermen vanished along the fog-covered inlets of Bracken Bay, Kentucky. By sunrise, their boats drifted empty, nets torn apart, and the water carried only the echo of a violent territorial message. Hidden behind the brutality was a single family feared across the region. The O'Malley brothers, 4 men raised in the swamps, shaped by isolation, and governed by an unforgiving code. Locals whispered that the brothers had always treated the bay as sacred inheritance. Outsiders, especially fishermen from neighboring counties, were seen not as rivals, but as invaders. The sheriff's department knew the O'Malleys well. Reports of bar fights, illegal trapping, and nighttime threats had filled folders for years. But no one expected what unfolded that night. In this episode, we uncover the chilling sequence that led 4 brothers to eliminate 11 men in less than 6 hours. An operation carried out with precision, rage, and a territorial instinct passed down through generations. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment your city and the exact hour you're watching this. It helps the investigation reach more people. Bracken Bay never slept. Even on calm nights, the water carried a pulse, soft tides rolling against the cypress roots, the distant hum of insects vibrating through the dark reeds, and the low whistle of wind slicing through the marsh grass like a warning only locals could interpret. Outsiders rarely understood that the bay behaved like a living thing, and those who underestimated it usually paid a price. But no one understood its moods, its dangers, and its unwritten rules more than the O'Malley brothers. Patrick O'Malley, the eldest, stood at the edge of the family's warped wooden dock just after sundown, staring across the water as a thick layer of fog crawled in from the east. He rubbed the back of his neck, his skin browned and scarred from decades of swamp heat. Patrick wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke, people listened. And tonight, as the air cooled and the crickets quieted, he sensed something was coming, something that felt like a crack forming in the foundation of their world. Behind him, Aidan O'Malley, the second-born, dragged a rusted metal cooler across the planks. Aidan was the loud one, the unpredictable one, known across 3 counties for starting fights he always finished. He kicked open the cooler, grabbed a beer, and took a long swig before leaning beside Patrick. "They're out there again," Aidan muttered, wiping his mouth with the back of his sleeve. "Same boats as last week. Didn't even bother hiding their plates." Patrick didn't turn his head. "You sure?" Aidan snorted. "I know the sound of a Mercer County engine when I hear one. Those boys don't blend in." Patrick inhaled slowly, letting the humid air fill his chest. Mercer County fishermen were known troublemakers. Rough men who ran their boats too close to forbidden inlets, hauled nets in the dead of night, and pretended they didn't hear warnings shouted across the water. But this time, trespassing wasn't just disrespectful. It was intentional, and intentional was dangerous. Footsteps approached from behind. Liam, the third brother, appeared with a coil of rope over his shoulder and a lantern in his hand. Liam was different from the others, quiet but thoughtful, with a sharpness that didn't come from violence but from awareness. He read people the way others read weather patterns. And tonight, the look on his face said he had read something unsettling. "They're getting bold," Liam said. "Too bold. I counted 4 boats hugging the southern inlet. That's our line. Always has been." Aidan cracked his knuckles. "Then we remind them." Patrick held up a hand, silencing Aidan without a word. A rustle came from the tree line. Declan, the youngest, emerged carrying an old Winchester rifle slung over his shoulder. At 25, he had the build of a fisherman, but the eyes of someone with something to prove. Declan never believed he had earned his place among his brothers yet. He tried to, constantly, and that made him dangerous. "They're laughing out there," Declan said bitterly. "Heard 'em, like they don't give a damn whose water they're on." The 4 brothers exchanged looks, unspoken, heavy, carved by years of shared instinct. The O'Malleys were raised under one rule: the bay is blood, and blood doesn't get stolen. Their father, Seamus O'Malley, had drilled it into them since childhood. He taught them fishing, trapping, steering by the stars, and fighting by any means necessary. But above all, he taught them loyalty to land and family, something the brothers carried long after he died. Patrick finally turned away from the fog, his jaw tight. We warned them last month. We left the markers. We pushed them back twice. They didn't listen. Aiden spit into the water. They're daring us. They're testing us, Liam corrected, and they think we won't push back this time. Declan stepped closer. Then let's show 'em we will. Patrick stared at each of his brothers, weighing the moment. This wasn't a simple dispute over fishing spots. This wasn't muttered threats exchanged from boat to boat. This was a deliberate move, one that threatened the O'Malley's authority, their legacy, and the raw ecosystem they considered sacred. The bay's been ours for as long as we've been alive, Patrick said finally, his voice low but steady. No one touches it, no one crosses it, and no one steals from it. The fog thickened, rolling across the water like a white curtain closing off the horizon. The lantern in Liam's hand flickered, casting uneven light across the dock. A lone heron screeched somewhere deep in the marsh, a sound that carried like a warning. Patrick stepped off the dock and onto the dirt path leading to their shed. Tomorrow before dusk, we go out. All four of us. No warnings this time. Aiden smirked, cracking open another beer. About damn time. Liam nodded silently, already calculating currents, tides, and the likely routes the Mercer fishermen would take. Declan followed Patrick closely, eager, restless. But as they moved through the darkness, none of them saw the small rowboat hidden deep within the fog, nor the pair of figures listening quietly, or still, waiting to hear exactly what the brothers intended. The battle for Bracken Bay had already begun. The O'Malley brothers just hadn't realized it yet. The next morning broke with a sky the color of bruised steel, clouds pressing low over Bracken Bay as if the weather itself knew something was coming. The humidity was heavy enough to taste, dragging across the brothers' lungs as they prepared their boats for the evening confrontation. No one said much. They didn't need to. The decision had already been made. Patrick stood near the doorway of the shed, sharpening a long fillet knife with slow, deliberate strokes. Each slide of steel on stone echoed faintly in the enclosed space. He wasn't preparing the knife for intimidation. He was preparing it because the bay demanded readiness. If the Mercer fishermen intended to push deeper into their waters, the O'Malleys would not meet them unarmed or unprepared. Aiden rummaged through a crate of gear, nets, ropes, old tools, before pulling out a pair of heavy-duty boat hooks. He slammed them onto the table with a clang that made Declan flinch. "You think they'll fight tonight?" Declan asked, gripping the strap of his rifle. His eyes burned with a mixture of eagerness and fear, the kind of tension that lived in men who wanted to prove they were more than their reputation. Aiden smirked. "They came here knowing it wasn't theirs. They stayed after being told to leave. What do you think they plan on doing?" Declan swallowed hard. "I think they're testing us." Liam stepped in, carrying a stack of maps and tide charts he'd pulled from the drawer under the workbench. His tone was calm, analytical. "They're not just testing us. They're watching us. Yesterday wasn't random." Patrick looked up from his knife. "What did you see?" Liam spread a chart across the table. The edges were stained with water and years of use. He pointed to the southern inlet, their inlet, where thick reeds grew in tangled webs and the current twisted unpredictably. "Look here," he said. 4 Mercer boats moving in tight formation. That's not fishing. That's scouting." Aiden's jaw tightened. "Scouting for what?" "Routes," Liam said. "Escape paths, entry points. They're mapping us." Patrick leaned over the chart, his eyes narrowing. "Which means they're planning something larger." Aiden grabbed one of the boat hooks and slammed it lightly on the floor. "Then we hit first." "No," Patrick said firmly. "We hit smart." Silence fell. The brothers had grown up with a father who taught them that violence without purpose was weakness. Seamus O'Malley believed in dominance but not recklessness. A fight was never won by the man who swung first. It was won by the man who understood the terrain, the timing, and the opponent. Patrick lived by those lessons even after their father passed. "We wait until dusk," Patrick continued. "Fog will be heavy again. We go out quiet. No lanterns, no noise. We stay against the reeds, follow the current north, and cut across the inlet. We trap them between the shoal and that old cypress stump. Aiden nodded, recognizing the plan instantly. Good choke point. They'd have nowhere to turn. Liam tapped the map again. If they're planning an ambush, that's where we'll catch them preparing it. Declan exhaled slowly. And if they're not planning anything? Patrick's expression hardened. Then they shouldn't have crossed the line in the first place. The shed went still again, tension settling in the air like dust. Outside, the wind shifted, bringing with it the faint smell of salt water and engine exhaust. The brothers exchanged glances, knowing, grim. Hours passed in preparation. They filled fuel cans, tightened bolts on their motors, inspected their hulls for weaknesses. Aiden tested the radios, though they all knew they wouldn't use them unless absolutely necessary. Liam packed spare gloves, rope, and a waterproof bag with tools. Declan cleaned the Winchester with a seriousness that surpassed his age. Patrick watched over everything silently, the calm center of the storm. By late afternoon, the sky dimmed further and thunder rumbled somewhere far off, deep, distant, a low growl that vibrated across the bay. Fog crept in earlier than usual, slinking across the water in thick coils. "The bay wants something tonight," Liam said under his breath. Patrick nodded. "Then we give it what it's owed." As dusk approached, the brothers slipped their boats into the water. The engines hummed softly, muffled under blankets to avoid detection. The fog swallowed them quickly, turning the familiar marsh into a maze of shadows and silhouettes. Aiden led the way in his flat-bottom fishing skiff, moving with surprising stealth for a man of his temper. Liam followed slightly behind, steering through the reeds with precision. Patrick and Declan rowed together in the largest boat, its hull reinforced with welding their father had done decades earlier. "Stay close," Patrick whispered, voice low, but controlled. "Don't get separated." Declan nodded, gripping the edge of the boat as they drifted deeper into the inlet. The bay around them seemed to breathe, dark water shifting beneath the surface, insects droning like static, the occasional splash echoing faintly through the fog. The air smelled of wet earth, river moss, and coming violence. Aiden raised his hand, signaling the others to slow. Shapes loomed ahead, unnatural shapes, too still to be trees. Liam narrowed his eyes and squinted through the haze. "Boats," Liam whispered. "3 of them, drifting." Patrick's heartbeat quickened. "Empty?" "No," Liam said. "Look at the lights. Someone's on them." Declan clutched the rifle tighter. "Should we call out?" Patrick shook his head. "No sound. We get closer first." The 3 Mercer boats floated in a loose cluster, lanterns glowing faintly within them, small, flickering points of gold in the gray fog. But something felt wrong. Something felt staged. Aiden drifted closer, gripping his boat hook. As the fog parted just enough to reveal the nearest vessel, his expression changed. "Jesus," he whispered. A rope hung over the side of the boat. Attached to it, swaying gently with the tide, was a fisherman, lifeless, his neck bruised, his chest pierced, his body sacrificed to the water. Liam swallowed hard. "This isn't scouting. This is a message." Patrick's eyes darkened. "And it's not meant for Mercer County." Declan stiffened. "It's meant for us." The fog closed in tighter. Somebody else had entered the bay. Somebody neither side expected. And the O'Malley brothers were now caught between invaders and ghosts they didn't yet recognize. The fog pressed in so thick it felt alive, clinging to the brothers' skin as they approached the boat with the hanging fisherman. The lantern on the bow flickered in the damp air, casting jittery shadows across the man's face, purple, swollen, and beginning to stiffen. The rope around his neck was tied with a sailor's knot, tight and practiced. Whoever had done this knew the water, and knew how to send warnings. Patrick motioned with 2 fingers. "Liam, check the hull. Aiden, keep eyes on the other boats. Declan, watch our backs." Declan swallowed, nodding, though his hands trembled slightly around the rifle. He hated fog. It made everything feel too close, too unpredictable. Tonight, the bay felt like it was holding its breath. Liam climbed carefully onto the drifting boat. The boards creaked beneath his boots. He crouched near the edge and examined the rope. This knot, it's not Mercer style. Those boys don't tie this tight. And look, 3 coils, 1 hitch. That's marsh trap work. Aiden frowned. Meaning? Meaning someone local did this, Liam replied softly. Someone who grew up on this water. That implication hung in the air like a curse. Patrick scanned the horizon, or what little he could see of it. If this isn't Mercer County, then who the hell else would cross into our bay and leave bodies floating? Aiden gripped his boat hook until his knuckles went white. Those fishermen disappeared last night, but this ain't them. This man's older, different build, wrong clothes. Whoever this is, he wasn't part of that 11. Liam looked at the man again. They marked him. Look at his hands. Patrick leaned over. Liam lifted one of the fisherman's arms. The fingertips were cut. Small slices, controlled, deliberate. Counting marks, Liam said. 1 slice per... something. Declan's voice cracked slightly. Per kill? Patrick didn't answer. The thought was too plausible. A sudden splash echoed somewhere to their right. Declan spun, raising the rifle. Movement! They all froze. The water rippled in a tight circle before going still again. Too large to be a fish, too controlled to be natural. Patrick hissed. Engines off. Now. The brothers immediately obeyed. One by one, the low purrs of their motors faded, replaced by the eerie silence of fog-drenched marshland. Every distant sound sharpened. The croak of frogs, the slow lap of water against hulls, the faint metallic clink from the drifting boats. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, barely audible, Liam whispered, I hear oars. Aiden turned his head sharply. Where? East side, Liam said. Against the reeds. Patrick narrowed his eyes and strained to listen. There it was. Soft, steady, deliberate strokes. Someone paddling. Someone who knew how to move silently. Declan's voice wavered. Are they coming toward us? No, Patrick said, though he wasn't convinced. They're circling. The oars slowed, then stopped. Aiden stiffened. They're watching. Let them, Patrick replied. We're watching back. But he knew the truth. Whoever was out there had the advantage. They knew the fog, the currents, the choke points. This wasn't random. This was orchestrated. And the O'Malleys had stepped straight into it. Patrick, Liam said quietly, look at the water around the boats. Patrick followed Liam's gaze. The water beneath the drifting vessels was darker, almost stained, as if something thick mixed with the tide. Aiden leaned in. Blood? Liam nodded once. Old blood. Hours old. Declan exhaled sharply. Those bodies last night, maybe they weren't all Mercer kills. Maybe someone else's. Patrick cut him off. No speculation, facts only. But in his mind, the pattern was forming. He didn't like the shape of it. Suddenly, from deeper in the fog, a voice echoed, raspy, distant, almost swallowed by the mist. Get out of the bay. The brothers jolted, looking in all directions. Declan whispered, Did you hear that? Aiden rose slightly in his skiff, scanning the haze. Where the hell? The voice came again, louder this time, but warped by distance. You should have stayed in your swamp. Patrick grit his teeth. Show yourself. No answer, just silence, followed by the sound of an object hitting the water nearby. A splash, small but intentional. Liam turned toward the disturbance. Something's floating toward us. A shape drifted slowly out of the fog, an old wooden crate, half-rotted, carried by the gentle current. Aiden hooked it and pulled it close. The brothers leaned in. Patrick pried the lid open. Inside lay a pile of cut fishing lines, a torn net, a pair of crushed lanterns, and a blood-soaked glove. Liam froze. That's Henry Slate's glove. Declan felt his stomach drop. Slate? But he went missing 2 days ago. He wasn't part of the 11. Exactly, Liam whispered. This started before last night. Aiden backed away from the crate slightly. Someone's clearing the bay, killing fishermen from both sides, and they want us to know it. Patrick stared at the glove, jaw clenched. No, they want us to fear it. The fog thickened again, swallowing the world in gray. A soft creak sounded behind them, wood shifting against wood. All 4 brothers spun. The second Mercer boat, previously drifting, was now turning. Slowly, as if nudged by something unseen beneath the water. Declan's pulse hammered in his ears. Patrick, we need to move. For once, Aiden added. The boy's right. Patrick hesitated only a moment before nodding. Back off. Quiet. We regroup near the shoal. They pushed away from the dead man's boat, engine still cut, drifting backward with the current. Liam kept his hand on the rope, guiding their distance. Aiden scanned the fog with unblinking intensity. Declan aimed the rifle at the shifting silhouettes. But as the distance grew, the truth became undeniable. Someone else was hunting on this bay. Someone methodical. Someone patient. Someone who understood fear better than the Mercers ever could. And the O'Malley brothers had just stepped into that predator's domain. The tide carried the O'Malley boats backward in a slow, uneasy drift as the fog thickened around them. The brothers remained silent, each of them listening, reading the water, and trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. No one spoke until the silhouette of the shallow shoal began to rise through the haze, an uneven stretch of sand and broken oyster shells that formed a natural barrier along the bay's midpoint, a place the brothers often used as a waypoint during night runs. Patrick was the first to touch land. He pulled his skiff onto the shoal with a grunt, scanning the pale horizon. It was barely visible, just a shade lighter than the sky, but it was enough. The rest of the brothers followed, boots sinking into wet sand. Spread out, Patrick ordered quietly, but stay within sight. Aiden nodded, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. Fog's too thick to vanish more than 10 feet anyway. Declan forced a shaky exhale, trying to calm himself. He hated how the air felt here, heavy, unmoving, as if the fog was holding the entire bay hostage. His boots scraped over shells as he moved to the left side of the shoal. Liam crouched near the waterline, dipping 2 fingers into the tide. Smell that? Aiden crouched beside him. Metallic. Fresh. Blood, Liam said. Patrick stiffened. From the fisherman, or from whoever left that crate? Liam shook his head. This is newer, minutes old. Declan swallowed. Someone's close. A sudden thud echoed behind them, soft but unmistakable. All 4 brothers turned sharply. A wooden pole had washed onto the shore, bumping against the shells. Declan moved toward it cautiously, rifle lifted. The pole was old, carved with deep grooves along its surface. Liam joined him and knelt beside it. This is from a trot line, he said, but look at the marking. He turned the pole slightly. A burned symbol stared back at them, a stylized X inside a circle. Aiden's brow furrowed. That's not Mercer. And it's not anyone from Bracken Bay, Liam added. I've never seen this mark. Patrick stepped forward. Someone's leaving signs, messages. They're orchestrating this. Declan's eyes scanned the surrounding fog. Why the hell would someone want 11 fishermen dead and then taunt us like this? Aiden gave a dark laugh. Maybe they're trying to draw us out. And we came running. Patrick knelt, brushing sand from the pole. No, this isn't random. This is ritualistic. Deliberate. Someone has a claim here. And they believe we crossed it. Liam's jaw tightened. We've been running this bay for years. If someone thought they owned it, we'd know. Unless they've been hiding in it, Patrick replied. A cold silence settled over the brothers. Then from the far end of the shoal, Declan called out, "Patrick, over here." The others hurried toward him. Declan was standing over a circular patch of sand. The shells around it were disturbed, as if someone had knelt there, but what drew their attention wasn't the mark in the ground. It was the object lying in the center. A fisherman's hat. Aiden narrowed his eyes. "That's Clay Danner's hat." "Are you sure?" Patrick asked. "I'd bet my damn boat on it," Aiden said. "Clay always stitched that blue thread along the brim. Said it brought him luck." "Clay's one of the 11, Liam said quietly. "This confirms they passed through here." Declan stepped back. "So they weren't killed at sea, they were brought here." Patrick looked around the shoal. Some were killed on open water, some maybe here. But this place was part of their route. A sudden gust of wind swept across the sand, carrying a faint smell, burned wood. Patrick's head snapped toward the southern edge of the shoal. "Do you smell that?" Aiden nodded. "Someone lit a fire recently." Patrick moved quickly, leading the way across the uneven sandbar. The fog parted just enough to reveal a small pit, ashes still smoldering inside. Next to the pit lay something wrapped in burlap. Liam crouched carefully and unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a set of gloves, thick leather, stained with dried blood. The fingertips were cut open. Aiden exhaled harshly. Same cuts as the man hanging on the boat. Declan ran a hand through his hair, pacing backward. "This is a damn ritual, counting kills, marking territory. Whoever this is, they're not sane." Patrick's voice was controlled but taut. "This isn't insanity. It's organization, precision, someone with a method." Liam lifted one of the gloves. If they cut a finger per kill, and the missing fisherman number 11, Declan backed away. "Patrick, how many cuts are there?" Liam counted slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. By the 7th, he stopped. 7 cuts. Aiden stiffened. They killed 7 by the time these gloves were used. Patrick's mind ran quickly. Meaning 4 more died after this fire was lit. Meaning whoever did this stayed here long enough to watch the last deaths unfold. Declan's skin crawled. "Patrick, why would someone stay and watch?" Patrick looked toward the fog-covered water. "Because they wanted to make sure no one survived." A distant splash cracked the tension like lightning. Then another. Then the soft, unmistakable beat of oars. Aiden whispered, "Someone's coming." Patrick straightened, jaw set. "Positions. Now." The brothers spread out, forming a tight semicircle along the edge of the shoal. The water in front of them rippled. A shadow emerged. A boat, small, flat-bottomed, unlit, gliding silently toward them. And in it, a single figure, slouched, still, watching. Declan felt his breath catch as the outline grew clearer. The figure slowly raised one arm, holding up something long and dripping. A fishing knife. Patrick's voice came out low, steady, and filled with an anger he rarely allowed himself to show. "Who are you?" The figure didn't answer, didn't speak, didn't flinch. Instead, he lifted the knife higher, revealing what was carved deeply into the blade, a circle with an X inside it. The same mark burned into the trotline pole, the same symbol haunting the bay. Aiden whispered, "Patrick, that's their claim." And Patrick O'Malley knew exactly what it meant. The brothers were no longer hunting. They were being challenged. The fog had thickened into a pale, suffocating curtain by the time the O'Malley brothers positioned themselves along the inlets. Bracken Bay, normally alive with the chatter of birds and the hum of distant engines, had fallen into a strange, unsettling quiet. It was the kind of silence that felt intentional, as if the bay itself were holding its breath, waiting for what was coming. The tide was beginning to shift, dragging cold water toward the deeper channels, and with it came the faint metallic scent of tension. Cormac crouched near the old cypress tree, his boots half buried in mud slick from the evening drizzle. He could hear the soft tapping of water against wood as Kellen's boat drifted into position just ahead of him. Behind them, Declan checked the tension on the fishing line they had tied across the narrow passage, testing it with a slow pull. The line was thin but lethal, wrapped with metal hooks sharp enough to gut a man. And at the far end, Rowan tightened the knots anchoring it to a pair of rusted stakes. Once they hit this line, Declan whispered, they won't have time to scream. Rowan gave a single nod. That's the point. Their voices were low, barely more than breaths. They didn't need much communication. Years of living in the swamps, hunting, trapping, and surviving together had formed a silent language among them. The tilt of a head, the shift of weight, the rhythm of breathing. Tonight, that unspoken communication was sharper than ever. The brothers weren't improvising. They were executing. The fishermen from Rockland County had been warned before. The brothers had slashed nets, sunk traps, and even fired warning shots across their bow weeks earlier, but the outsiders had returned anyway, driven by rumors that Bracken Bay was overflowing with untouched waters and record-breaking hauls. Greed had brought them back into O'Malley territory, and greed was a language the O'Malley brothers didn't tolerate. Cormac scanned the water, squinting through the fog as faint lights flickered in the distance, lanterns strapped to the fronts of boats. The Rockland fishermen were approaching, slowly, carelessly. They hadn't learned, or worse, they had underestimated. Cormac felt his jaw tighten. They're splitting up, Kellen murmured from the shadows. Cormac followed his gaze. The boats were drifting in small clusters, 3 on the left channel, 2 on the right, and 6 heading straight for the inlet where the line waited patiently. Rowan's calculating stare narrowed. Good, Rowan whispered. The ones on the side channels won't hear a thing until it's over. A faint hum of engines vibrated across the bay. Declan motioned for the others to hold position as he adjusted his grip on the harpoon gun. It wasn't a typical weapon for a territorial dispute, but tonight wasn't a typical confrontation. Declan had always been the one with the darker imagination, the one who could turn a simple tool into something dangerous. The harpoon gun was loaded with a steel bolt sharpened beyond factory standards, wrapped with barbs he had forged himself. The first Rockland boat drifted into the passage, its lantern casting a soft glow that barely penetrated the fog. The pilot, a man wearing a thick green jacket, leaned forward to peer into the mist. The bay was quiet, too quiet. Even he sensed something wrong. But not soon enough. The boat sliced forward, its bow striking the tensioned line with a violent snap. Metal tore through the air as the hooks whipped upward, cutting across the deck and dragging the pilot off his feet. His scream was strangled by water as he plunged overboard. The second man tried to grab him, but the line recoiled again, ripping into his forearm and sending blood across the railing. Rowan stood first, stepping from the reeds with the calm of a man who believed the land itself was on his side. He moved toward the boat with slow, deliberate steps, his boots sinking softly into the mud. Behind him, Cormac and Kellen followed, emerging like silhouettes carved from the fog. Declan stayed back, raising the harpoon gun, waiting for his moment. The second Rockland boat jerked sideways, its captain shouting commands that were swallowed by the mist. Engines rev-ed, panic spread, but the brothers remained calm, closing in with steady precision. The captain pulled a pistol from his belt, a revolver with a shaky grip. He fired blindly into the fog. The shot echoed through the bay, bouncing between tree trunks and over the water. Birds scattered. The fog trembled. But the bullet hit nothing. Kellen moved first. He stepped onto the rocking boat, grabbed the captain by the collar, and slammed him against the mast. The revolver fell into the water with a hollow splash. The captain's breath stuttered. "You were told to stay out of our waters," Kellen growled. The man tried to speak, but Kellen didn't let him. Rowan gestured toward the side channel. "Declan." That was all Declan needed. The harpoon gun fired with a deep puncturing thud, and the steel bolt tore through the second Rockland boat, pinning one of the fleeing fishermen against the railing. His body slumped forward as his companion screamed. Cormac climbed aboard, kicking the tangled fishing line aside. He glanced at the men still standing, 2 shaken, 1 bleeding, 1 desperately trying to untie the anchor rope. "You had your chance," he said quietly. What followed wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was efficient, controlled, cold. The O'Malleys dispatched the remaining men quickly, moving with the grim precision of hunters accustomed to the kill. There were no wasted motions, no hesitation. Within minutes, the first 6 fishermen were gone, swallowed by the bay or left slumped across the decks of their own boats. The brothers regrouped near the tree line, breathing slowly as the fog thickened once more. "That's 6, Cormac murmured. Rowan stared into the mist where more lantern lights were drifting toward them. 5 left, he said. We finished this before dawn. And the bay, silent, watching, seemed to agree. The fog around Bracken Bay thickened into something almost physical, a heavy curtain swallowing sound and light alike. The water barely rippled. Even the crickets along the shoreline seemed to sense what was unfolding, their usual chorus replaced by an eerie stillness. The O'Malley brothers stood shoulder to shoulder near the tree line, their silhouettes hardened by purpose and by the quiet certainty of what still needed to be done. 5 left, Rowan had said. And now those 5 were coming straight toward them. Their lanterns glowed faintly through the mist, small swaying orbs of yellow light that shimmered like ghosts. The boats moved slowly, cautiously, the fishermen sensing something was wrong but unaware of the scale of the bloodshed that had already occurred. Cormac gripped his machete, the same one he had sharpened for years, its edge reflecting the dim light with a cold glint. His jaw tightened as he watched the shadows shift across the water. They're sticking together, he muttered, smarter than the first group. But not smart enough, Declan replied, adjusting the rope coil slung across his shoulder. His hands were still steady, but his eyes were dark, focused, calculating. They're nervous. That makes them predictable. Kellen crouched down, pressing his palm against the damp grass. Tide's moving faster now, he said. We can use that. Rowan turned toward the water, his presence commanding but controlled. He wasn't the loudest of the 4, but when he spoke, the others listened. No split-ups this time, he said. We take all 5 at once, clean, quick, no noise if we can help it. He nodded toward the narrow channel branching to the north, a deeper pathway known locally as Fisherman's Turn. It was where 2 currents collided, dragging anything caught between them into a violent spiral beneath the surface. Locals avoided it. Outsiders didn't even know it existed. But the O'Malleys knew every inch of it. That's where we hit them, Rowan said, before they reached the open water. Without another word, the brothers moved toward their boats, gliding across the mud like shadows. Their muscles moved with the precision of men who had repeated the same motions since childhood. Rowan and Cormac climbed into the first boat. Declan and Kellen took the second. The engines purred to life, low and controlled. The fog swallowed them instantly. As they circled around the fishermen, approaching them from behind, Rowan signaled to kill the engines. The brothers let their boats drift silently with the tide, closing in with a predator's patience. Rowan's heart beat steady in his chest, not from excitement, but from obligation. The bay had rules. The O'Malleys enforced them. Up ahead, the Rockland fishermen spoke in tense whispers. Where the hell is everyone? Those should be Biloxi markers, but I don't see. Keep the lantern high, do not cut that engine again. The voices wavered with fear. The men sensed danger, but they were already in its center. A soft thud echoed behind them, the sound of Kellen hooking the back of their last boat with a long steel gaff. He pulled gently, guiding their vessel toward the heart of the spiral current. Declan grabbed another rope, tying it to the cleat with calm, practiced movements. None of the fishermen noticed. One of the men, a taller fisherman wearing a red waterproof jacket, leaned over the bow, squinting into the fog. Something's pulling us, he said. Feels wrong. Cormac emerged from the fog like a figure carved out of the night itself. It is, he said. The man jerked backward, eyes wide, hand reaching instinctively for a knife, but he never got the chance to draw it. Cormac leapt onto the boat in one fluid motion, gripping the fisherman by the front of his jacket and slamming him hard against the railing. The impact knocked the knife loose, sending it clattering to the deck. Rowan stepped aboard right behind him, his boot landing silently on the wet wood. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. "Not tonight. Not ever." The other fishermen scrambled, reaching for oars, tools, anything that resembled a weapon. One grabbed a flare gun and fired it upward in panic. The flare burst above the fog, painting the bay in an eerie red glow, a color that matched the violence unfolding beneath it. Declan and Kellen used the distraction. They jumped onto the second boat, Kellen knocking one fisherman off balance with the handle of his oar, while Declan pinned another man against the cabin doorway, rope already in his hands. The man struggled, but Declan's strength was a lifetime of swamp work, and the fisherman's resistance crumbled quickly. The spiral current tugged harder now. The two boats bumped, scraping wood against wood as the water churned around them. Rowan grabbed one of the men trying to start the engine and slammed his wrist against the control panel. Bone cracked. The fisherman screamed. "Boats stay off in our waters," Rowan said. That rule was clear. Another fisherman tried to jump overboard, maybe hoping he could swim to another channel, maybe just acting on raw instinct. But the current dragged him under almost immediately. The whirlpool beneath Fisherman's Turn didn't forgive panic. Cormac caught another man by his collar as he tried to flee toward the bow. "You think you can run in our bay?" he said. "This bay raised us. It won't hide you." He forced the man to his knees. The remaining fisherman, the one who fired the flare, looked around at the bodies slumped across the decks, the brothers closing in, the deep water swirling beneath them, and his face paled to a sickly gray. "We didn't know," he gasped. "We didn't know it was your territory." Declan stepped toward him. "Doesn't matter," he said quietly. "You were told, and you came anyway." Lightning cracked in the distance. A storm was forming, drawn to the violence like a witness. In less than 3 minutes, the last 5 fishermen were gone. Some pulled under by the current. Some slumped across the decks, blood dripping into the tide. One tied in place, unable to escape what he had chosen to challenge. The brothers stood in the fog-thick silence, their breath steady, their silhouettes still. "That makes 11, Rowan said softly. Kellen pushed his wet hair back, his jaw clenched. "No outsiders," he muttered. "Not now. Not ever." The bay was silent again. But now it was a silence the O'Malley brothers had earned. The storm rolled in slowly, almost respectfully, as if the sky itself understood what the O'Malley brothers had just done. Low thunder rumbled across Bracken Bay, deep and hollow, carrying through the marshlands and bouncing against the cypress trees. The fog began to shift, curling around the boats like long fingers, tightening, then loosening again. Rowan wiped the water from his brow. He wasn't sure if it was rain or the mist. "Storm's closing in fast," he said quietly, staring at the churned water below. "We need the bodies gone before the tide changes." Declan stepped over one of the slumped fishermen and began untying the knots he had made minutes earlier. "Currents will take them north," he said. "Straight toward the old sinkhole. Won't surface for days." "Good," Cormac muttered, nudging a body with his boot to ensure it was fully over the edge. It slid into the water with barely a splash. "Let the bay eat what it deserves." Kellen was quieter than the others, his eyes scanning the horizon as the fog thinned enough to reveal distant lanterns along the shoreline. Not fishermen, just homes, people, families who had no idea what had happened tonight. "Think anyone heard that flare?" he asked. Rowan paused. "Maybe," he said. "But a flare doesn't mean bodies. Could have been a storm signal. Could have been an accident." "We make sure that's all it sounds like," Declan added firmly. The brothers worked methodically. They had learned long ago that violence wasn't the hardest part. Disappearing violence was. Their father had drilled that into them since childhood. If the bay gives you something, the bay can take it back. One by one, they pushed the remaining bodies into the swirling water. Some sank immediately. Others drifted for several feet before the spiral current of Fisherman's Turn dragged them down with a hollow gulp, the surface sealing behind them like nothing had happened at all. Cormac cleaned his blade in the water. 11 men, he said, snuffed out in one night. That should keep the outsiders away for a decade. Or it'll spark questions. Kellen said. Rockland won't ignore this. 11 fishermen don't vanish without someone looking for them. Rowan fastened the tarp over the boat's bow. Let them look, he said. But they won't find answers here. Not unless we slip up. The wind picked up, shaking the trees along the marshy bank. Leaves skittered across the water. Thunder cracked again, closer this time. The first cold drops of rain splattered across the decks. Declan tightened the rope coils and threw them into the boat. We need to burn their gear, he said. Nets, coolers, jackets, anything that carries their scent. We'll use the pit, Rowan agreed. No one goes there after dark. They motored back toward the hidden inlet where the brothers stored their equipment. The rain intensified, drumming against the metal hulls, masking the sound of their engines. Lightning flashed, illuminating the mangroves like skeletons reaching out in warning. Kellen kept looking over his shoulder. Something's off, he said. Cormac snorted. The only thing that's off is 11 men who shouldn't have stepped foot in our bay. No, Kellen insisted. It's too quiet, even for a storm night. Rowan didn't dismiss him. Kellen had the sharpest instincts out of the four. What do you think it means? Kellen hesitated. It means someone else is out here, or something's watching, something that shouldn't be. Cormac opened his mouth to mock him, but then he froze. So did everyone else. A faint light flickered through the trees. Not the golden flicker of a lantern or the soft glow of a house light. This one was cold. White, flickering in slow pulses. Declan narrowed his eyes. That's not a fisherman's light. No, Rowan said. It's not. The light blinked twice, then disappeared. Kellen's grip tightened on the edge of the boat. Someone's signaling. Thunder rolled overhead again, drowning the last word. The brothers continued toward their hidden cove, more alert now, blades and tools within reach. When they arrived, they pulled the boats ashore and dragged the fishermen's gear to the fire pit, a deep, stone-lined circle their father had built decades earlier for burning hides, trapping waste, and anything else the swamp shouldn't keep. Declan dumped the nets into the pit while Rowan poured kerosene across them. The soaked ropes hissed like snakes. Cormac tossed in the jackets and bags. Kellen grabbed the cooler, heavy, filled with leftover bait and tools, and slammed it into the pit. When Rowan struck the match, the flame ignited instantly, rising in a bright, angry column that lit the cove in orange light. The fire crackled and spat, twisting shadows across the brothers' faces as the rain struggled to smother it. Cormac stared into the flames. Nobody will find a damn thing. Rowan nodded, but he wasn't fully convinced. We did our part, he said. But that light out there, it bothers me. Declan wiped his wet hair away from his eyes. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe, Rowan said. But Kellen suddenly turned his head sharply toward the trees. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, too heavy to be an animal, too slow to be the wind. Cormac grabbed his machete. Declan clenched a length of rope. Rowan stepped forward, eyes narrowed. Show yourself, Rowan called out. Silence. Then, from somewhere in the tree line, not far, not close, a voice answered. You boys think the bay belongs to you. The brothers stiffened. The man was unseen, the voice unfamiliar, the tone brazen. And maybe it does, the voice continued. But those 11 men, they ain't the only ones who came here tonight. A chill ran through Rowan that had nothing to do with the storm. The fog deepened around them, and the O'Malley brothers realized something. This night wasn't done with them yet. Dawn bled slowly over the treetops, a pale strip of light cutting through the black silhouettes of pines as Noah Harrington stood alone on the ridge. Frost clung to his beard. His breath drifted in slow, wavering clouds. Behind him, the bodies of the 12 ranchers had already been retrieved during the night, stacked on wagons headed for the county coroner. The clearing now looked almost peaceful, as if the violence had never happened. But Noah felt it, deep in his bones. The silence left behind by a massacre never stayed silent for long. It echoed. He wiped the dried blood from his knuckles. A tremor ran through him, not from the cold, from knowing what came next. Bootsteps approached the ridge, heavy, steady. He didn't turn. He knew that rhythm. Each of his brothers walked like a different part of him. This one was Elijah. "We've got a problem," Elijah said softly, stopping beside him. Noah's jaw tightened. "Which one?" Elijah hesitated, and that hesitation alone told Noah it was bad. Carter Jenkins escaped. Noah's breath froze mid-air. Carter Jenkins, the only one of the Jenkins clan still breathing after last night's ambush. The one Noah had begged his brothers to finish on the spot. The one Elijah insisted could bleed out in the woods without help. Apparently, Elijah was wrong. How far could he have gotten? Noah asked. Hard to say, he lost enough blood to kill a horse. Elijah rubbed his brow. But we found a trail, sloppy steps, handprints in the dirt. Looks like he's dragging himself. Noah finally turned to face him. Dragging himself where? Elijah looked down the slope toward the valley that led straight to town. Noah closed his eyes. He didn't need a map to understand the risk. If Carter made it to town, even half dead, he would talk. And if he talked, everything the Harringtons had built, protected, buried, justified, would burn. We can still stop him, Elijah said, though even he didn't sound convinced. Noah walked past him without a word. He moved fast, with the precision of a man raised to track elk by scent and shadow. Elijah followed. Then Caleb, then the rest. 8 men, 8 Harringtons, moving as one entity with a single shared purpose. End the threat. No witnesses. Nothing left to rewrite the truth of what happened on that ridge. They followed the trail into the lower woods. Every branch snapped under Carter's hands had become a breadcrumb. Every smear of blood, a declaration. I'm still alive. Noah studied each sign with a tension burning under his skin. He knew Carter wasn't just crawling for survival. He was crawling toward revenge. Toward the sheriff. Toward a chance to drag the Harrington name through the mud for eternity. They found the first clue of his direction at the riverbank. A bloody handprint on a boulder, and next to it, boot tracks that did not belong to Carter. Fresh. Noah crouched. Sheriff Dalton. The worst possible timing. He already found him, Caleb muttered. Noah ran a thumb across the print. Not found. Passed through. Dalton hasn't doubled back. That means Carter's still in play, Elijah said. And Dalton doesn't know he's walking into a storm, Noah added. The air tightened. What had begun as a recovery of a loose end was now a race against both time and the law. They did not fear Dalton. They feared the questions he would ask once he realized the bodies piling up across the county weren't coincidences. They sprinted along the river trail until they reached a steep, rocky incline. There, slumped against a fallen tree, barely conscious, was Carter Jenkins. Skin gray, eyes half open, breathing in shallow, ragged pulls. Sheriff Dalton stood over him, hands on his knees, panting like he had run for miles. He didn't see the Harringtons approach until Noah stepped deliberately into view. Dalton's eyes widened, not with fear, with understanding. What happened here? The sheriff asked, voice steady despite the tension. Carter tried to speak, a wet gargle escaping his throat. Dalton knelt beside him, pressing a hand over the worst of the bleeding. Save your strength, son. We'll get you help. Noah's hand hovered near the holster at his hip. Sheriff, step away from him. Dalton rose slowly. His gaze flicked to each brother, reading their posture, their intent. This doesn't have to go where I think it's going, Dalton said quietly. Elijah stepped forward. Sheriff, he's dangerous. You don't know what he's done. Dalton nodded at the wounded man. Whatever he's done, whatever you think he's done, he's still alive. And that means he's under my protection. Noah's pulse thundered. He won't live long, Elijah pressed. There's no saving him. Then let him die in a bed, Dalton replied. Not on the forest floor. Caleb growled. He's a threat. You don't understand what he... I understand enough, Dalton cut in. 12 dead ranchers. 12. Someone needs to explain that. And unless you want the whole county breathing down your necks, you need to think very carefully about your next move. Noah stepped between the sheriff and his brothers. For a moment everything froze, the river whispering below, the wind rustling through dead leaves, Carter's labored breathing like a dying animal's last cry. Noah, Elijah whispered. Say the word. Noah swallowed hard. For the first time since childhood, he did not know the right choice. If he killed Carter, the truth died with him. If he let Carter live, the truth became a weapon. And yet, the sheriff stood here unarmed, outnumbered, refusing to step aside. A good man. A decent man. Noah lowered his hand from his holster. Take him, Noah said. Elijah snapped his head toward him. What? Noah didn't raise his voice. Take him. But you make sure he lives long enough to tell the truth the way it happened. Dalton exhaled slowly and nodded. I can do that. Elijah turned away in disbelief. Caleb kicked a stone, cursing, but Noah held firm. Maybe this was the price. Maybe this was the turning point. Maybe blood wasn't always the answer. Dalton hoisted Carter's limp body over his shoulder and started down the trail toward town. As he disappeared into the trees, Elijah stepped beside Noah. You just spared the one man who can destroy us. Noah stared at the river, its cold water sliding over stone. Or the only man who can save us, he replied. The brothers said nothing, but unease settled around them like fog. A war had ended on the ridge that night, but another, more dangerous one was beginning, and this time bullets wouldn't be enough.